The art of the deal has officially collapsed into the art of the desperate retreat. For months, Donald Trump operated under a single, arrogant assumption that if he squeezed Canada hard enough, if he threatened our economy with enough ferocity, and if he lied loudly enough about national security, Ottawa would eventually break. He bet his entire political reputation on the idea that Canada was weak, dependent, and easily bullied. He was wrong. What many analysts whispered about in private is now exploding into the public view. The bully is backing down. After a relentless campaign of economic intimidation, illegal tariffs, and diplomatic insults, Donald Trump is reportedly preparing to wave the white flag. According to explosive new reporting from the Financial Times and confirmed by deep sources within Washington, the U.S. president is actively looking for a way out. He is considering a full rollback of the steel and aluminum tariffs on Canada, the very same tariffs he once called essential to American survival, the same tariffs he used as a weapon to try and crush Mark Carney's government. Make no mistake, what we are witnessing is not a tactical adjustment. It is not a negotiation strategy. It is a humiliation. It is a public, undeniable admission that his war on Canada has failed, and that American voters are the ones paying the price for his ego. Welcome back to Canada SR. Today, we are dissecting the anatomy of Donald Trump's defeat. We are going to show you exactly how Mark Carney's strategy of strategic silence outlasted Trump's chaos, and why this retreat signals the end of American leverage over the Canadian economy. Let's look at the timeline, because the timing of this leak tells you everything you need to know about the panic inside the White House. After imposing punishing tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum, and after months of gaslighting the American public by insisting that foreigners were paying the bill, reality has finally breached the walls of the Oval Office. According to the Financial Times, senior White House advisors have presented Trump with a grim reality check. The tariffs are not working. They are not bringing jobs back to the Rust Belt. They are not hurting Canada's resolve. Instead, they are acting as a massive tax on American manufacturing, and they are dragging down the president's approval ratings just as the midterm election cycle heats up. This report wasn't supposed to get out. It leaked because the administration is desperate to test the waters. They are terrified of their own base, but they are even more terrified of the economic data.
After months of digging into the trade war, the Trump administration may be considering a retreat.
That's going to be the president's decision.
A new report suggests the president could be considering walking back his signature tariffs.
We'll see if there's kind of a narrowing. My understanding is if anything is done, and I don't think it's great reporting that we saw today, if anything is done, I think it would be sort of clarification.
According to the London-based Financial Times, Donald Trump plans to roll back tariffs on metal and aluminum goods as he battles an affordability crisis that has sapped his approval ratings. The White House dismissed the report as baseless speculation, but an official told Global News Trump's tariff agenda is nimble and nuanced, suggesting there's wiggle room.
Instead of raising taxes on domestic producers, we're lowering them and raising tariffs on foreign nations.
That's going to be the president's decision. That is the sound of an administration looking for an exit ramp. Notice the language being used by the press and the spin doctors. They are calling it a narrowing or a clarification. But let's translate that into plain English. When a superpower threatens a neighbor with economic destruction, imposes sanctions, and then quietly offers to remove them without getting a single concession in return, that isn't a clarification. That is a surrender. The White House immediately tried to dismiss the Financial Times report as baseless speculation. But watch what they did, not what they said. Behind closed doors, officials are telling networks like Global News that Trump's tariff agenda is nimble and nuanced. Nimble. Nuanced. These are weak words. These are the words of a politician who is trying to wiggle out of a trap he set for himself. They are trying to frame a retreat as a flexibility because they know the truth. Canada didn't blink. To understand the magnitude of this failure, You have to remember how this started. Trump's steel and aluminum tariffs were never about economics. They were never about national security, as he absurdly claimed under Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act. How exactly is Canadian aluminum, used in American fighter jets and American tanks, a threat to U.S. national security? It isn't. It never was. This was about political dominance. It was psychological warfare. In the summer, Trump escalated his attack, raising tariffs on Canadian metals to a staggering 50% and expanding them to consumer goods, washing machines, household appliances, the things everyday Americans buy at Walmart and Home Depot. He looked the American worker in the eye and promised that these taxes would strengthen American industry. He swore that Canada and other foreign nations would write the check. It was a lie. And not just a small lie. It was a multi-billion-dollar deception. Instead of an industrial boom, the United States suffered a supply chain crisis. American manufacturers who rely on high-quality Canadian steel suddenly found their costs skyrocketing. Small businesses in Ohio and Michigan, the very people Trump claimed to champion, were forced to lay off workers because they couldn't afford the raw materials to build their products. Independent research didn't just question Trump's claims, it dismantled them piece by piece.
Hiked tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum to 50% this summer, and expanded taxes on a range of goods made from metals in ovens and washing machines.
We lost tremendous amounts of money.
So have American businesses. The Federal Reserve Bank of New York found nearly 90% of the tariff economic burden fell on U.S. firms and consumers.
All of the analysts are showing that Americans are, in fact, paying the price of these tariffs. No one other than Trump really thinks the foreigners are paying.
Rising costs could spell trouble for Trump ahead of the midterm elections in November. Yet he continues to threaten more levies on Canada and downplay the impact on the U.S.
Do you agree then that Americans are paying those tariffs?
I think, no, I don't agree. I think that they might be paying something, but when you take the overall impact, the Americans are gaining tremendously.
The ultimate decision will be up to the U.S. Supreme Court, which could rule on the legitimacy of most of the tariffs.
Did you catch that number? 90%. The Federal Reserve Bank of New York, not a liberal blog, not a Canadian think tank, but the absolute bedrock of the American financial system, ran the numbers. They found that nearly 90% of the economic burden of these tariffs was paid directly by American firms and American consumers. In strategic terms, this is what we call self-immolation. Trump pointed a weapon at Canada, pulled the trigger, and the bullet went straight into the foot of the American economy. Americans were paying for Trump's toughness. Not Canada, not Canadian exporters. American families were paying more for cars. American workers were losing shifts. American businesses were canceling expansions. Economists from across the political spectrum, from the far left to the libertarian right, screamed the same warning. Tariffs are taxes on domestic consumption. They weaken competitiveness. They kill investment. They slow growth. But Trump didn't listen. He was too drunk on the applause of his rallies to look at the ledger. He turned his signature policy into his greatest economic liability. I don't agree. Even when confronted with the mathematical reality, he denies it. Americans are gaining tremendously, he says. This denial is not accidental. It is pathological. And, more importantly, it is political. Donald Trump knows that if he admits the tariffs raised prices for Americans, he admits that his entire economic worldview is a fraud. He has to lie. He has to double down. Because acknowledging failure would mean admitting that Mark Carney was right and he was wrong. But you can only fight gravity for so long. By this year, the political consequences became unavoidable. The affordability crisis in the U.S. is no longer a talking point. It is a reality for millions of voters. Trump's approval ratings are in freefall in key swing states. Business leaders who once feared tweeting against him are now openly criticizing his trade wars. Even loyal Republican lawmakers are whispering in the corridors of Congress that the trade war has become a suicide pact. With the midterm elections approaching, the tariff policy shifted from being a tough guy asset to a radioactive liability. Trump faced a binary choice: continue a failing policy and get slaughtered at the ballot box, or retreat and suffer the humiliation of admitting defeat. The reports are clear. He is choosing retreat. He is choosing to save his own skin rather than continue a war he cannot win. But let's be very clear about one thing. This reversal did not happen in a vacuum. It didn't happen just because Trump made a mistake. It happened because Canada refused to panic. Under Prime Minister Mark Carney, Ottawa rejected the bait. When Trump tweeted fire and fury, Carney responded with cold, hard calculus. While the opposition parties in Canada screamed for reactive measures, Carney played the long game. This is the Carney doctrine in action: diversification as defense. While Trump was obsessed with squeezing the North American supply chain, Carney was busy building new bridges to Europe and Asia. He strengthened the CETA agreement. He deepened ties with the Indo-Pacific. He systematically reduced Canada's dependence on the chaotic whims of Washington. Carney understood something Trump didn't. Economic resilience isn't about shouting, it's about options. While Trump relied on brute force and pressure, Carney built leverage. While Trump escalated tensions, Carney stabilized the Canadian dollar. While Trump threatened to tear up agreements, Carney diversified our customer base. As a result, when the tariffs hit, they hurt, but they didn't kill. Canada was never forced to surrender. We didn't crawl to the White House begging for relief. We stood our ground, absorbed the blow, and waited for the American economy to turn on its president. And that is exactly what happened. Trump's leverage evaporated because Canada proved it didn't need his permission to prosper. Now, watch the spin machine go into overdrive. Even as they prepare to roll back these tariffs, the Trump administration refuses to use the word failure. They describe the agenda as nimble. They frame the retreat as a clarification. Do not let them gaslight you. This is political damage control, pure and simple. In geopolitics, when a government describes a reversal as flexibility, it usually means the policy has completely collapsed. Trump is trying to retreat without admitting he lost. He wants to take his hand off the hot stove and pretend he never touched it. But the facts are indelible. For Donald Trump, this reversal is uniquely damaging. Think about his brand. He built his entire political identity on toughness, on winning, on being the guy who never backs down. Yet, this episode exposes him as the exact opposite. He imposed massive tariffs and failed. He hurt his own economy and failed. He denied reality and failed. He lost public support and failed. And now he is preparing to reverse course. This is not the behavior of a master strategist. This is the flailing of a drowning man. After months of chaos, Canada emerges from this trade war stronger, more unified, and more independent. Trump emerges weakened, isolated, and exposed. This is not strength. It is strategic failure of the highest order. Trump did not lose this battle because of bad luck. He lost it because of bad strategy. He ignored every expert who told him this would happen. He dismissed the data because it didn't fit his feelings. He politicized trade to score points with his base, alienating his closest allies in the process. He overestimated his leverage, thinking Canada would fold like a cheap suit. And fatally, he underestimated Canada's resilience. Each of those mistakes compounded. Each of them reduced American influence on the global stage. Each of them strengthened Canada's position as a stable, rational actor in a chaotic world. Donald Trump did not outplay Mark Carney. Mark Carney outlasted Donald Trump. The impending rollback of steel and aluminum tariffs marks the total collapse of Donald Trump's pressure campaign against Canada. It is the final nail in the coffin of his bullying strategy. It confirms that intimidation failed. It proves that economic bullying backfired. It shows that facts eventually matter more than feelings. And above all, it demonstrates that steady, serious leadership beats political theatrics every single time. Mark Carney's strategy worked. Canada diversified. Canada stabilized. Canada strengthened. Trump tried to create chaos. Instead, he created his own defeat. This is what happens when ego replaces policy. This is what happens when you mistake noise for power. If you value deep, strategic analysis that cuts through the noise and tells you the truth about Canada's fight for sovereignty, you need to subscribe to Canada SR right now. We don't just report the news, we explain the game. Thank you for watching. We will see you next time.